And now I hand over to Danielle and Andre, and please, for all of us, introduce yourself. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Andreas. Good afternoon, everyone. Greetings from Dusseldorf for me. Actually, I just arrived here. I am the Associate Vice President of Product Management at HCL for the Connections portfolio, formerly of IBM. So we are excited to be here, and I'll let Andre introduce himself as well, and also Michelle, please do the same.
Hey, I'm Andre. Some of you might know me. I run the engineering team for Connections. Michelle, do you want to go next? You're muted?
Might be muted.
Andreas, can you unmute Michelle?
Michelle. You need Michelle?
Yeah.
See.
Now.
We are.
Michelle will introduce you later.
Thank you.
There she is.
Just real quickly, guys. It's Michelle Franklin. I also came over from IBM with Danielle as part of the Connections portfolio, and my mission is going to be focusing on the Cloud Next strategy.
Yep. Thanks, Michelle. So we've included Michelle here, so that way, as we answer questions and things like that about cloud, we can sort of share with you how things are progressing there as well. Okay, hopefully everyone can see my slides. I'm going to go ahead and get started. I am trying to figure out how to stop looking at all of us. Okay. So last week at the factory tour in Chelmsford, we shared our initial view of our future. So a lot of you may have heard me talking about our bright future in the last 6 months or so, all the while sort of keeping to ourselves what that vision and strategy will be. So today, Andre and I will share for you what we really see as that future, and we'll continue to develop this thinking as we go, and we'll share updates with you regularly. So really what this is all about is making sure that we're enabling your most valuable assets, which are your people. So teaming, working, and getting results, leveraging your most relevant content. And that's really what this is all about. So let's jump in. One of the foundational things that we've been talking about is really the necessity for engagement. In order for our employees to truly be successful, it requires them to be engaged. One of the values that we see in Connections, and by bringing these communities of people together around common purposes, tasks, and goals, is really to drive their level of engagement, which increases their level of productivity. And by the way, also makes them more dedicated employees. So the time that you've spent working with people to train them, statistically speaking, based upon their level of engagement, they're more likely to stay in their role and be successful. And the science behind engagement is pretty interesting and very much speaks to a lot of the things we've been talking about lately. And that is looks count. So we know that the user experience and the look that you're having and the feel that you're having and the way in which you're collaborating with your team members is important. Those aesthetics really do make a difference, and that first impression makes a difference in how likely someone is to get engaged in the system that they're using. And as we talk through sort of what this future is and what it looks like, you'll see that we have a ton of focus here because we really want to help listen to what we've heard from our customers and from our partners. And that's, you need us to help you drive adoption of the tools that you have, number one. And number two, we are going to try to change things so that you're not having the distractions of shifting between many different tasks in many different locations. So let's jump in and talk a little bit more about it. So we know successful organizations really understand how to leverage their human capital. So being human means to think, create, engage, and share. It really means to connect. Teaming with others, we can accomplish anything. And going it alone, oops, sorry guys, I'm having a little technical difficulty. Going it alone only gets you so far. Bear with me 1 second, I apologize. Sorry guys. With Connections, we can get it done. So what does this mean for your business itself? So if we think about the way in which we're collaborating and we think about the way we're doing so in Connections today, this sort of graph shows us sort of the spheres of influence and the frequency in which we're getting involved in various things. So for example, on the bottom right corner here, bottom left corner here, we see really my work. So this is what I'm doing often. This is what's first and foremost for me as I'm working throughout my day. Versus the next level is really working with my teams. So for my work, I may be leveraging Orient Me today, where I'm really surfacing all the things that I need. The algorithms are helping me understand what comes next. Whereas my teams, I may be working in communities. I may be collaborating in a wiki or a blog. And then there's my department and even my company, where I may be leveraging also communities and leveraging highlights, or I may even be using Connections Engagement Center as well to understand what kind of things I need from HR, what are corporate-wide communications that are happening, and where do I need to be engaging with my company overall. So some of the ways that we helped map out what our future really looks like and validate our thinking is the Let's Connect jams. And you may have heard us, you may have either participated in some of them, or you may have heard us talk a little bit about them at DNUG and some of the other user group meetings that we've been at in the last 6 months. This gave us an opportunity to hear sort of the pain points, the user outcomes, and even some of the big ideas that a lot of our customers and partners have, allowing us to make sure that we're filtering that into our thinking for the future. And in those big ideas, there's some key themes that we really heard about and you're going to see in the roadmap that we're about to share. One is integration. This is a really big one, and we'll talk about what that means. 2 is adoption and user experience, and we'll talk about the things that we're working on to help you with that now and the way that we'll be targeting things for the future. This concept of a dashboard or hub came up quite a bit. And we'll talk about the way that we're going to be applying that thinking. And finally, automation and digital assistant as well. So really, we have 3 key themes when we think about the innovation that drives engagement and better outcomes. And I really wish I wasn't having a technical issue with my screen, you guys. I really do apologize. Bear with me 1 second. All right. Hopefully you can see my screen okay. So the first theme is connections as the pulse of the organization. And we'll talk a little bit about and show you what this really means to us in some visualizations. But connections as the pulse of the organization, this means I have my finger on exactly what's happening throughout the day as things are changing, whether it be for me individually, for things happening with my team, or throughout the organization. Some examples of this include Orient Me and what we envision for the future with Orient Me as we bring things together. Personalization and intelligence. Personalization allows us the opportunity to start to be able to do things in context of the way that we're working. So if we personalize experience for our users, they're less likely to move away, right? It's just the things that they need right then and there, based upon the people and the content and the projects that are most relevant to them. And we'll talk about this in the context of tailored experiences in just a minute. And finally, people power your business. This is really the concept of people are at the center of collaboration. And here's where we're going to get into the topics of social and knowledge graphing that can give us countless benefits, not only from our federated search capability, as well as being able to leverage the power of our network. So let's dive into some of the visualizations around this. So imagine that you have the opportunity to view your day on a single pane of glass. This is going to give you the rundown of everything that will be important to you during your workday. So here we have the opportunity, and you can see some of the examples popping up, right? I see SAP Concur, I see an integration directly with the application where I can actually take action on a travel approval. I can add an activity based upon what I need to do today for time tracking. There's a SharePoint integration here that demonstrates that there's been new content added that's going to be pertinent to me based upon the communities and the people that are important to me and the projects that I'm working on. So by doing this integration with various applications, different content repositories, and even different workflows, we have the opportunity to have the user have a personal experience all on this single pane of glass. This integrated workspace not only allows for applications, but also integration with, in this example, you can see the calendar bar going across the bottom. We see a chat window popping up, sliding out based upon the conversation that I want to have right in context of what's happening next, as well as my mail. And this could be whether it's Verse or Outlook. It could be Same Time, Rocket Chat, whatever the different integrations are that we choose as we move forward. And this also gives us the opportunity to have consolidated communications and working across multiple contacts and unifying our calendar. The next piece is about harnessing the power of your network. So by leveraging this strong network that you have, both internal and external to your company, you have this opportunity to surface hidden insights that could become valuable in your workday. And connections can bring out the best and the brightest in your organization by doing so. Andre, do you want to talk a little bit about this section? You want to jump in?
Sure. So just think about all of the content that we have in Connections today. We've got several customers who use Connections primarily as a file store, and that's usually the way customers deploy Connections and get into using it. But if you think about all the wikis, the comments on wikis, forums, replies to forum threads, activities, comments on activities, status updates, like there's content in Connections all over the place. It's a huge content repository. And the relations that exist between the content and the creator of the content, the people who interacted with the content, the people who liked, shared, commented, all these relations are somewhere buried in the Connections databases, but we're not currently in a position where we can expose them to either the end user through visualizations for them then to take action on it, or to customers and partners as a company through APIs. So what we are planning to do is connect all those dots in what we call sort of a knowledge graph, where all the content items, the people, and the actions are all linked together, and then we can start using them in various applications. A very obvious one, for example, is search. When I today look for a certain search term, the only thing that determines which search result bubbles to the top is the full text index that is calculated through the search engine. But what would make much more sense in the context of Connections would be a situation where it's not just a full text index, but also the network proximity between me and the content item that I'm about to find. So it makes a difference whether I'm finding a search result that is written by somebody who sits on literally the opposite side of the company, or whether it was written by Michelle or Danielle, because we're working in the same team, in the same department. Chances are that the thing that we're writing about is much more relevant to me than the thing that this other person was writing about. So search is just one very obvious example. We can use this in recommendations for communities, network contacts, onboarding experiences. And the last step, sort of what I hope we can get to, is that we expose it as an API so that customers can use it for any kind of applications that they're building. Because this relevance between two entities, whether it's a person, an action, a content item, that can be used pretty much anywhere across the company. And that, I think it's a very powerful thing to expose as an API.
Certainly. Thank you.
So maybe one more comment about what we flag as expertise. If you think we have, if you imagine that we're in a position where we built this network graph, one thing that we're already doing as within the scope of the services assets, and we'll talk a little bit more about those later, is we don't just index, or we don't just associate people, content, and actions, but also what the action is about, what the content is about. So we tie together we tie together. If I'm writing a wiki page, then I'm tying the subject to me and the wiki page. So I know that a person is interested or has expertise around a certain topic. And if we bring those pieces into the mix, then we can answer questions around who's an expert for a certain topic, who's available at this time based on, for example, calendar integration. And that's where all these pieces come together. The network graph with external integration and the expertise piece can then formulate really, really strong use cases.
And all of this is based upon the fact that we want to be able to surface this in the context of what you're doing, as opposed to going off and searching for it, right? And I think you've talked a little bit about this as well, Andre. So, right, the relevant updates, how we can build stronger relationships as a result of being able to harness this network as well. So, thanks. The third piece we really wanted to talk about and sort of visualize a bit is the concept of a tailored experience. So today we can create communities with a template, right? And we can leverage that template and use it elsewhere, but really it's just sort of the layout. The concept here with tailored experience is really to have the opportunity to set up a community. Let's say I'm a project manager and I'm a certified PMP and I'm running a project, and I have a certain way in which I follow that to make sure that I'm using all of the best practices necessary so that I can maximize value for the company, make sure the team is collaborating most effectively, etc. Here I can create a space in which I can do that. And this space, if successful, I can actually lift and shift this space to be applied to projects all over the company if I wanted to. And here we have the opportunity to sort of create a standard by which the company is able to leverage so that they can better measure the return on the investment, the way that they're managing their projects, and some consistency throughout. And project management is just, of course, one example. And this isn't just a community as you see it today. It's a community where perhaps we're bringing in certain applications. Perhaps I have a sales deal room and I need to bring in an integration with Salesforce. I want to bring in an integration with a meeting service of some kind as well as chat. And I want to be able to track what's happening as I work through various deals on my sales team. It's really about creating purpose-driven spaces. We can create them very rapidly with no-code building blocks. It's something I can do as a business user versus having to leverage the help of an admin or an engineer. And really it can adapt to any use case you can think of. And the key is that repeatability factor. So by creating these templates where we can lift and shift them, we create a number of opportunities here. I can very easily see our partner community having expertise in various areas where they actually create a core set of templates that can be leveraged by customers that have a really robust system involved. And really taking a life cycle based approach. So in the project example that I use, you can visualize the fact that as I start as a community manager and a project leader, I'm going to add a couple of people in as I'm creating the community, right? I'm going to be adding certain content and asking them in to bring in some basic templates and things that we're going to be leveraging, a project plan, etc. Then I'm going to bring in the whole project team. We're going to actually work through the project, follow it through to completion. And then we may actually put it into a state where it's read-only. So we're leveraging best practices or information that we had, or just referencing our past executive updates that we may have had before we finally archive it and no longer need to reference it. And this is something that we've heard a lot about, much like the other topics in our Let's Connect jams, validating that our customers and partners believe that this could be a valuable asset to them. And so finally, as we think about all of these things, of course, they're going to be open, they're going to be secure, and you're going to hear us continually talk about integration. In the past, we've sort of had a sort of push, right, against Microsoft. HCL doesn't have that posture. HCL is a partner of Microsoft. We have the opportunity here because of that posture to be able to take an integration strategy. Our customers have been asking for this for some time, and we're now in the fortunate opportunity that we can leverage this. So you will see us looking at integrations like the one you see on the screen here, and certainly others. These are the ones that we've sort of heard most. Microsoft Office, Office 365, SharePoint, Teams, WebEx, Salesforce, SAP Concur, Domino, Same Time. So the list is not just this, but these will just give you some examples to think through. Now, as we talk about this, and as you see the roadmap, you'll notice that Andre and I did not distinguish between on-prem or cloud on the roadmap. And there's a very good reason for that. And so I'll sort of take you through some of our thinking, and then I'll ask Andre to jump in with some more foundation there. One, we are working to bring our code stream together. We have an opportunity to not actually have to run a single tenant versus multi-tenant code stream. So you'll see us start to bring that together in the next year. We also made an announcement last Tuesday, I think it was Tuesday, about the future of cloud. And so we talked about the fact that at HCL, we do believe that cloud is very important for our future. Cloud and on-prem are foundational pillars to our future in the way that we deliver software. And we essentially announced that our existing cloud infrastructure does not necessarily provide what we need in order to deliver the innovation that we see necessary for future. So for example, when I talk about those integrations, we really want the opportunity in our public multi-tenant cloud to be able to integrate with Microsoft in another cloud and various services in other clouds. You know, I can envision things in the future like bring your own intelligence and things like that, leveraging other services so that we really can have a multi-cloud environment. So that's one. So we announced that one, we will have an HCL public cloud that we be able to support that environment. And Michelle has joined us today because she is actually leading the team for our Cloud Next initiative. So the public multi-tenant cloud is one of them. The second piece is a partner-led cloud, and this is new. I'm very excited about it because in the 3 years since I've been back in the collaboration organization, I've talked to a lot of customers that while they feel better about cloud, they really would like to have their data resident to where they are. This provides an opportunity for a partner to run a multi-tenant cloud. They can specialize either on a certain geography or even a certain industry if there's certain certifications that need to be important in that area. So this becomes an interesting new opportunity in market for our customers and for our partners to take advantage of. And the third key piece is private cloud. And this really isn't new. This is just, if you think about our single tenant cloud today on-prem, the idea of containerizing that deployment. So one, our on-prem customers can move to continuous delivery and take updates in a much more automated and simple way as we Dockerize those containers. And two, the option to actually have a private cloud hosted by a business partner or someone else. So Andre, I'll stop there. Do you want to comment at all?
I think you've said pretty much everything that I usually say to the slide. I would just like to emphasize this announcement has been, I think, several people approached me and asked me, so is there no Connections Cloud anymore? I think that's important to understand that Connections is the offering that will continue to exist, right? And Michelle is working on what that's going to look like. And as soon as we have something that we feel confident in sharing, we'll do so. The partner-led cloud is really the one thing that's going to allow us a lot of flexibility, because today we have to pick our battles between the various certifications and compliance restrictions that we need to comply with. Mm-hmm. In the future, there's going to be one cloud that HCL owns, and they're just like with today's IBM's cloud, there's going to be a specific set of certifications and data residency restrictions, et cetera, that it will comply with. But then every customer or every partner can decide that they go to Germany and set up a German-only cloud, and that complies with all the rules and regulations. Industries, for example, governmental industry, healthcare, insurance, all of these have specific data residency requirements and data processing agreements. So, and we will never be in a position where we can fulfill all of them. But we've got partners who specify on certain industries, and they're much better. And actually, they could build solutions on top of it. So that's really, really exciting. Maybe one more question around containerization. That's the thing that came up quite a bit recently. We are going to move forward with containerization and Kubernetes. There's going to be a lot more communication around what we do with Component Pack and how we are going to reduce the total cost of ownership, adding more capabilities, and frankly, a lot more education between the first release of Component Pack and what it is today. There's been a lot of optimization, and it's honestly becoming quite clear that customers don't necessarily have the latest piece of information around what Component Pack requires.
Yep.
So yeah, that's
great. Thanks, Andre. And we'll answer questions about this because I know it's very timely with the announcement last week. So we'll leave time at the end for that. So let's talk about the roadmap because I know that's why you're here. So the roadmap right now is a little bit high level. We've been at this only for a few weeks, and you're going to see us start to fill this in over the next month or so with more detail. But we wanted to share right away what we're thinking. So number one, as you may know, in the last year, we've gotten to a quarterly cadence of releases. We've been releasing a CR every quarter. We're currently at CR5, which we released at the end of May. I think I have that right, Michelle. We are going to launch CR6 this quarter by the end of September, in which you'll see, much like the other CRs, some minor updates and things. We're continuing to improve upon the UX and drive consistency throughout the portfolio, as well as, any fixes that we have for the quarter. We are launching, as you are experiencing today, our vision and strategy and the messaging around that, and we will continue to iterate on that. It's very important to us that you are part of this process, and we're excited now that we can actually get moving and put real capability into market, that you are part of this with us. And the third thing is introducing the Connections Consortium. So we're going to have more information about this. As Andreas alluded to, we're doing a workshop at Social Connections in September. During Social Connections, we will also launch this Connections Consortium. It is all about user adoption, bringing new assets that can be available to you to help drive your adoption, as well as a community of customers and partners that this topic is important. They've indicated that they would like to be part of the discussion with each other and bring best practices and share the results that are coming out of things as well. So you'll hear more from us on that shortly. In fourth quarter, we are going to launch our first HCL Connections. So this is where we will no longer be referring to it as IBM Connections. It will be HCL Connections 6.5. So it will be HCL washed. But that is not all we plan to do there. So in 6.5, we plan to incorporate a few services assets. So if you're not familiar with the term, in the past, some key capability had been created by the IBM services team, and certain customers had paid to have this capability to leverage in their environment. But it wasn't generally available to all customers, and a lot of people were not aware of it at all. Those three assets we're going to talk about in just a second. I'm going to have Andre run us through them. But they are the Connections Sidebar, Touchpoint, and Invite. And these are three additional opportunities where we can bring them into Connections, make them generally available to the entire population of users. And these things will help you drive adoption, help you sort of surface connections in new spaces, and we'll show you that in just a second. In the first half of next year, you'll see us starting to build out the foundation for launching Connection 7 in fourth quarter. As you may have heard Richard Jeffs commit in market, we're planning to do a big release per year. Connection 7 will be that for us. So things that we envisioned in the previous slides, you'll see us taking the steps toward bringing those into market. So Orient Me Next, tailored experiences, the integrations with HCL products like Domino, for example. You'll see us looking toward, SharePoint integration, for example. And generally looking at third-party integrations and bringing more of those in. We'd also really like to work with partners. As we do these integrations, we want to be able to share the patterns that we have so that partners can start to build some of the integrations that they think their customers can most benefit from and bring those into market with us. And in fourth quarter, we also have noted the multi-tenant connections for partner hosting. So you're going to see us marching toward that brand new offering as well in the next year. And then, of course, as we look for 2021 and beyond, really refining our strategy around intelligence, expertise, projects, and integrations, and really a dynamic and centralized experience across knowledge and relationships. Now, there's two things I didn't mention here. I did not mention Docs, and I did not mention Connections Engagement Center. And literally the only reason I have not mentioned them is because we just haven't built out the plans for them yet. So we will be working on that. I don't want anyone to take its absence as any other meaning. Those offerings did come with us over to HCL, and we will be examining them further as where we want to invest. Andre, anything else you wanted to comment here before I move to the assets?
No, let's go to the assets.
Okay. All right, I'll hand it over to you.
All right. I assume that this is a predominantly European audience. So talking about the assets is not necessarily going to. A lot of people on the call might know the assets already. I just want to preface this a little bit saying we've tried in the past incorporating some of them into the product, and Touchpoint is actually the one that got the closest, but it's still on the list here, and I'm going to say why. So in general, we brought over about a dozen assets as part of the divestiture. And in general, I would categorize them sort of into net new functionality, stuff that currently doesn't exist in Connections, and utility, convenience, and sometimes missing functionality. So those are the sort of the two categories, and we need to treat them very differently, because pieces like, for example, Invite, that's a capability that allows you to provision users in a Connections on-prem environment for the external users capability. So the external users, that capability has been in the product for a while, but there hasn't been a self-service way to provision a user from an UI. And Invite gives that to the end user, but it also gives the end user the ability to do self-service actions. For example, it has forgot password capabilities. It has a register form and that kind of stuff. So that's what I would consider be part of this missing functionality, right? It bridges a gap between what otherwise is a consistent story around external users.
And it satisfies a number of the things that we also see within the Ideas Lab and Connections, as well as some of the things that we heard at the Let's Connect jams as well. So it seemed like a natural fit.
And by the way, if you haven't seen it, it has quite a number of really strong configurations. For example, you can put in mail templates. I mean, that's good. But for example, it lets you restrict the people who can be invited to certain mail domains. So if your company only does business with 3 other companies, they can restrict the people who you allow to be invited to those mail domains. So that's pretty neat. So that's going to be part of the next release. Do you want to go to the next slide? Mm-hmm. Sidebar is a super lightweight integration that we have built for a couple of customers in the past to integrate Connections into other systems. So we've been talking a lot about integrating other systems into Connections. This is the opposite way, right? So for example, you've got an Adobe website or Salesforce or any other systems, and you want to give your employees an easier way to start adopting Connections by surfacing content from Connections wherever they are, even if they're not in Connections right now. So Sidebar allows you with literally a file of JavaScript that we're going to be surfacing and that we're going to be shipping as part of the product to integrate the Connections content as a sidebar into this other website. So you see a little bit of like a toggle icon somewhere on the left side or whatever the UI ends up being. And it expands the activity stream UI that you see there and gives you some contextual information. So one thing that I will admit here is that the UI of these assets has not been updated for a while. And what you see here is a concept of what it could look like in today's Connections. And that's why these assets are going to be a little bit Well, they're going to be continuously changed because you've heard Danielle talk about what Orient Me in the next iteration is going to look like. Sidebar is a great candidate to surface your top most relevant cards in Orient Me, because that's literally the stuff that the system thinks you should be working on right now. That is something you would want to see wherever you are, even if you're not looking at connections right now. So when we say integration of the assets, we mean, first of all, proper integration, so that it looks like the product is integrated tightly, comes as part of the product, gives you full support, all of these things that we didn't have in the past. And also we will keep them updated with the other changes that are going to happen around the product. And do you want to go to Touchpoint? So Touchpoint is the thing that has been available since Connection 6 as an optional download from Fix Central. The reason why I'm saying this time, or why it's listed here separately, is that this time we're going to make it part of the product proper, in the sense that it's going to be installed with Connection 6.5. It's going to have product level support, which it didn't have in the past, and it's going to be updated. Since Connection 6, the services team has continued to develop Touchpoint, and we've brought over those changes as well. That means that the additions that have been developed in the last 2-ish years will make it into the version of Touchpoint that has been on Fix Central, and will then be incorporated into the product.
And for those of you who aren't familiar, so imagine you have new employees that are starting and using connections for the first time. And one of the things we often hear is they don't really know where to begin, right? So Touchpoint actually gives you this step-by-step onboarding wizard, allows you to have suggestions about who you should be connecting with, what communities you should join, et cetera. And of course you can customize that. So I have a new employee, I automatically want them to be, in this organizational community. I want to make sure they have access to this HR data, et cetera. So it can help you with that process and getting them started much faster.
Exactly. And just one more general comment about what we mean when we talk about integrating, right? In the past, IBM has a history of claiming integration, but doing the thing that allows them to tick the box. Like this, the box integration was a prime example of how that happened. For all the integrations we've been talking about, the Microsoft Office integration as well as the assets, we don't want to do that. So we want to have, when we say integration, we want to have an integration that is meaningful, provides relevant use cases. And for Touchpoint, there's a really good example here. The integration of Touchpoint should pre-fill your Orient Me landing page. Because right now, not only is the activity stream empty, Orient Me is empty as well if you're a new user in Connections. But once you go through the various onboarding steps in Connections, you fill in your network, you join communities, you specify interests, and go through this entire process, then at the end, it should do the necessary churning so that when it drops you in Orient Me, you see relevant tiles and content that means something to you.
Great. Thanks, Andre. Mm-hmm. So as we close, a couple of things. So one, you're all invited. We're going to be at Social Connections in Munich. This is the Let's Connect playback. Excuse me. I jumped the gun. August 13th, we're doing a playback. If you haven't joined one of these, I would really encourage you to do so. Adam Gartenberg will be sharing all of the compiled data that we've learned, all the information that we learned from all of our customers and partners that participated. It's a wealth of information. Basically, the team, we've all taken it and summarized our learnings, the pain points that we've had, the key business outcomes that are needed, and the big ideas. So you can actually see and hear what we learned from that process if you're interested. We did deliver this session at DNUG. So if you attended there, just for your information, it will be the same session. And coming soon from us, you will, as I mentioned, hear about the Connections Consortium. We are also currently in the process of defining a Digital Solutions Board of Advisors. This is, we had something similar at IBM a while back. Our intention here is to create a program that allows high-level executives that are stakeholders in their company's collaboration to participate. And we'll be sharing sort of what the benefits and also the criteria for participation might be in case you think there's members of your company community that might be interested. And lastly, design partnership. So as you saw us sort of showing, what some of these designs might be, as we map out these user stories for what our future looks like, we really would like to partner with key companies that have a passion for this and that have been working with their user community about what outcomes are most important to them and the way in which they like to work, because we want to make sure we get these designs and experiences right. As Andre said, we want to do these integrations really well. This isn't about ticking a box for us. This is about really changing the way that you're able to work. So we plan to leverage the design partnership as one way to do that. And also, as a heads up, in case you haven't seen it, we've started with our adoption to create some short videos. So Renee Stimmer has created these. They are out on YouTube. And if you want them translated, if you go to the little gear setting in YouTube, you can actually have subtitles in the language of your choice. Makes it a little bit easier. They're 2 minutes long. It's meant to be, hey, here's how I could get started using files the right way. Here's how I could leverage Docs or Orient Me or even the community catalog. And we've just started down this process, so I'm anxious to hear feedback from you guys as you start to experience these if you think they're helpful. This isn't the only way that we'll put assets out there, but it's just one way that we wanted to get started. And then, as I started to say, Social Connections in Munich, mid-September. Social Connections, of course, is predominantly a connections community of users that will be participating. So there we plan to share our updated roadmap where we plan to have more details. And of course, we'll be getting right around the time that we'll be delivering CR6 as well. And 6.5 will be very close. So we look forward to sharing a number of updates with you there as well. So now I thought, Andreas, maybe you want to open it up for questions.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, it's Jörg. I have a list of questions, Daniel. I'm going to send them to you since I collected them out of the chat, so you don't have to scroll.
Oh, thank you. You're so nice.
The first bunch.
Okay, let's see how we can do it. Andre and Michelle, feel free to hop off mute so you can jump in as well. And these questions,
they can't see them yet. Sorry, so I can post them for everybody
okay.
if you like
I'll
to.
read them.
But just
That's
you,
okay.
which have them
So,
right.
first question: what is the future of Connections docs? Will they be a version 3? Or is an integration of other products possible? So as I started to allude to, and you may have written this before I said it, we will be coming forward with what the future of Docs will look like. We do believe in Docs as an application and think that it does add value into the Connections portfolio. So you will hear more from us on that. That being said, I'm going to say both, right? Because we are focusing on the integration of other products as well. As you heard, one of the things that came up in the factory tour last week and has come up many times as well is, some customers want to be able to leverage Office and have that integration as well. So we'll be looking at where the right places to do that will be. Next question, will Connections Cloud users seamlessly migrated to an HCL Connections Cloud? I don't know yet. So right now, and I'm Michelle, I'll give my 2 cents and then feel free to jump in. Right now, what we're doing is we don't want to make a bunch of assumptions before we've proven out what our architectural plan is. And along with that will be, some guidance to our customers on, here's what's available to you. Here's the suggestions we have on what you might want to do to move forward. But Michelle, did you have any other comments there?
Yeah, no, I mean, it definitely is something that we are working on and, trying to figure out the easiest, most seamless way to move our customers. Some of that does rely on architecture that we end up deploying. So they kind of go hand in hand, but, it definitely is on our radar and something that we're considering.
Yeah, thanks. Next question, will new Connections mobile clients for iOS and Android be available? So we are currently building out a mobile roadmap, and a good amount of the things that we've been talking about is the way in which we're going to do that, because there's been various conversations about React and the apps and versus browser, as well as sort of mobile device management as well. Andre, I don't know if you want to make any comments specific to mobile. I mean, we're not ready to launch that roadmap yet, but if there's anything you wanted to add there.
So the only thing I would say is that we're going to look at clients in general, right? Mobile is just 2 clients. I saw in the chat there are questions around the Outlook plugins. We've got desktop plugins for macOS and Windows. We had an exploration of an Electron client. We have the Harmony stuff and all. So we have so many plugins and clients for desktop, mobile, and other devices that what we need to do some effort of consolidation, but then declare the ones that we double down on as strategic and come up with a roadmap for those. So there will definitely be new versions of mobile. I mean, it's very unlikely that we're going to get rid of native clients, but what I'm trying to say is that there's most likely going to be more choice for the specific use cases that we decide are relevant for customers.
Yeah. So I feel comfortable declaring here that we will plan to deliver a mobile roadmap at Social Connections. I see the subsequent comment here that you really need a proper roadmap for upcoming releases so you can plan for the future, and we completely recognize that. So, okay, so the next group of questions, maybe you can explain the HCL DS technology stack a little bit more. Andre, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, I think that was Frank's. I started answering some of these questions in the chat, but then it dawned on me that since I'm not on mute, it might just be distracting. So that was the one that I got to answer. Portal is not going to be the only interface for connections. Obviously, what the picture represents is what all these products could look like together, right? We've had in the history we had a little bit of challenges regarding messaging, like where's the overlap between Portal and connections in Leap and Leap and same time. So this is more a way how that sort of represents a situation where a customer uses Portal as the customer-facing website, and it is fed information from Connections same time Leap. That obviously doesn't mean that Connections is becoming a headless backend that can only be interacted with through Portal.
Yeah, and the other thing I'll comment on, I think there was a little confusion out there at one point because I've had a number of questions on it. You know, as we will shift away from WebSphere, and it's, you know, our current dependency on it. However, we don't intend to deliver Connections on Domino. That's not our current intent. Andre, do you want to talk a little bit about what we are thinking there?
Yeah, I think that question was raised in the chat as well. I don't know where that came from, but so what we certainly are going to look like is where it would make sense for us to utilize Domino. For example, as a non-relational database in the component stack where we currently use Mongo. But Domino as the application server that runs the current enterprise archives, that's very unlikely that we can do that. And I'll use that as a segue into the question around Kubernetes and the continuous or the parallel deployment between the two of them. We have a plan for how we migrate off of WebSphere quicker than what we've been able to do so far. But realistically, there's going to be a situation where we continue to deploy both of them at the same time for a while. And that is going to be, we had a discussion around that at Engage, where Mickey presented Component Pack and asked the customers a question. So who of you has deployed Component Pack? And only a handful of customers actually raised their hands. And the biggest concern was, well, back when you introduced Component Pack, the promise was that you take a piece from here, move it over here, you can shut it down on the old stack. But realistically, the reason that Connections is that Component Pack is optional is also, or the fact that Component Pack is optional is the reason why it is optional. Because as long as it's optional, we can't make anything that sits in Component Pack, we can't remove that from the old stack. So this is why it's a little bit of a tricky discussion. We can't shut down profiles on the old stack and launch it on the new stack, because today that would make the Component Pack mandatory immediately. So that's why currently we're putting so much effort into reducing the total cost of ownership of Component Pack, making it easier for customers to deploy it and gradually upgrade it, so that a critical mass of customers has at least some version of Component Pack deployed, so that by the time we bring out a release of Connections that literally makes Component Pack mandatory because the central piece of the functionality has moved over, we don't experience a huge backlash from our customers because they're not prepared to run a piece of Kubernetes in their environment. So there was a lengthy explanation around why we're in the situation that we're in, but it's not an easy discussion to have had, and we'll have multiple more of these within user groups, roundtables, and all that kind of stuff. But it's still strategic that we're only building new functionality on the new stack.
Thanks, Andre. The next question is, wouldn't it make sense to keep the IBM Connections Cloud running until a multi-tenant version of HCL Connection 7 becomes available, so that partners and service providers, et cetera, can offer connection services? And further discussion around the importance of a migration path. Completely agree. I think that would be our desire. However, based upon the way in which that we've done the migration between IBM HCL, I shouldn't say the migration, poor choice of words. The way in which we've closed the deal between HCL and IBM, it's a necessity, right? That we move in this way. So we know it's not ideal, but that's why Richard Jeffs has assigned Michelle, our fearless leader, and a team of architects and engineers and product managers to make sure that we are able to map out a viable option there. Michelle, any other comments there?
No, I think, we're working in parallel, right? So I think the important thing is that we are aggressively pursuing our cloud strategy now so that we don't end up 12 months from now in the situation that the user's asking about, right? So that is our plan, is to be able to work with our partners, with our customers, with potential providers as we go through these next few months, so that it isn't lights go off and then at some point in the future the lights come back on, right?
Yeah, exactly. The next set was about some questions that I think have already been addressed regarding add-ons and plugins. So we're going to continue to look at what our strategy is there, as well as how we achieve those things, right? So as we look at integrations overall. Any plans for an HCL Connections Advocate program, similar to the existing Domino Advocate program? If you're speaking of the Lab Advocate program, absolutely. In fact, John Immerman gave a presentation last week, and many of us tweeted about it, that we have a number of customers right now that have Lab Advocates in the Connections portfolio. So we are going to integrate into the broader HCL Lab Advocate program, and that's going to start actually this week. We're cross-referencing the lists to understand where everything sits. And then what we will do is John and team will come forward and share all the details about what that new program is. And that may be something as well, Andreas, that we may want to consider bringing to this forum in the future, if you're interested as well. Andre, I've got one for you. So what happens with the admin tool ICXT? Any plans? So maybe you can talk about what we've been discussing there.
Sure. So as I said in the beginning, we brought over a lot more than the 3 assets we talked about today. And in fact, during the factory tour, we only spent a small amount of time on those 3, and we reviewed ICXT specifically. The reason why we haven't talked about expertise, locators, social Q&A, crowdsourcing, ICXT, and all the other ones, live chat, and there's a lot of them, is that most of these aren't as straightforward as invite, right? Invite and sidebar, these are pretty atomic pieces of functionality, and it just makes sense to put them into the product. ICXT is huge. It is an insanely powerful management and administration toolkit that allows you to move content back and forth, merge, split, export content, import and export from on-prem to cloud and back and forth, and all that kind of stuff. And what we need to figure out is, what is the right way of bringing it into the product? Do we just ship it with the product, and that's the way we integrate? That would be certainly the quickest way to do it, but it's probably not the way we would like to do it, because a lot of the functionality would make sense outside of an administrative scenario as well. And actually, the recent releases of ICXT have moved into that direction, where, for example, PDF printing has been exposed as a little context menu for every user. And that is sort of what we want to explore, which pieces in this vast array of capabilities are pieces that we want to expose outside of administrative privileges, and the rest of it is probably going to just come in the way it is. So we're definitely looking at it, but it'll require a little bit more discussion with customers, and the same goes for basically the entire expertise suite. It's just more discussions to have had.
Thanks. The next one, will Touchpoint and Sidebar and Connections Cloud be available too? So we commented on that in the roadmap. We're targeting those for 6.5, which is fourth quarter of this year. Jorg has put in here twice that, Danielle, you skipped the question about the roadmap. Will we have a proper roadmap? So I thought I answered that. That yes, in September, we will continue to add more detail to the roadmap you see today. So that way you can have a good understanding of exactly what's coming. So those details will be fleshed out further, so you can see those. And we're going to be iterating on this month over month, guys. We're on our third week as HCL, so we wanted to share what we have now, and we'll continue to add the details as we're mapping those out bit by bit. So. And then let me scroll down. In Connection, we have two more questions. I know we're at the end of our time. In Connections 5.5, there was a possibility to use mail out of Connections. Yes. In 6, it's gone. Is there any possibility to use mail out of Connections? Is there any possibility to convert a mail directly from mail to a blog entry? So I sort of gave a teaser of this one on stage recently by putting that, that mail integration back in. To see if anybody noticed and what the reaction was. And I got a very strong reaction that everybody wanted that. And I myself would like it as well. So we don't plan to put the past plugin or the past asset that we were using in there due to the fact that it's old code. We do plan, however, to make sure that you can easily get to sort of what's on top in your inbox. Again, that single pane of glass. So you'll see more about that from us and how we plan to apply that. And as far as possibility to convert a mail directly from mail to a blog entry, frankly, I don't know that we've put that on our backlog, but I can certainly look and see where that is in our list of prioritizations for what's in the RP community. You can deploy Connections Mail 5.5 on 6, it's just not supported, but it works. Yes, that's true. But I'd rather.
Now you've heard it from an official source. Danielle just said it.
I'd rather give you something that's supported. Do you have plans for Connections Editor app? Will it be replaced? We are actually looking at editors right now. In fact, this afternoon, right, Andre? But we are doing overall sort of a top to bottom review of our editors, as well as, where docs will be integrated in, et cetera. So we don't have much to share on that now, but we certainly will share in the future. No.
But one caller that I would make, we talked earlier about what we're going to do around mobile and in clients in general, right? The editor, the mobile editor app is one of those clients that has been removed from market. And if you guys feel strongly about the fact that something is missing around there, it would be super helpful if you would send it, for example, to Renee Schimmer and just describe the use case, why you like this versus anything else that is out there, because that is exactly how we will end up having to make assessments whether we invest in this area versus that area, because theoretically, and we could invest into all of them and wouldn't make any progress across the board. So we'll just have to pick our battles, and this is how we will have to look at whether where we put investment with regards to client development.
Awesome.
And
Sorry.
Jörg just unmuted everyone as we're coming to the end of the session. And I hear my echo. Danielle, Andre, Michelle, thanks a lot. Thank you very much for the insights. And we're looking forward to learn more from you. We said in about 1 month, we will have another webcast focusing on HCL Cloud Next. And of course, we will meet at Social Connection in Munich in September. Thanks again. And see you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.